fourth program of the 2024 IFPDA Print Month. I'm Jenny Gibbs, Executive Director of the IFPDA, the IFPDA Foundation, and the IFPDA Print Fair. This is the fifth year in which the IFPDA has offered a full month of free online programs, one of the happier outcomes of those lonely COVID years. And just to remind us that we once again can enjoy art and each other's company in real life, as the kids say. If you're in New York, we have a number of in-person offerings this month, including lino cut demonstrations this weekend at Jim Kempner Fine Art on both Saturday and Sunday. You can find more in-person programs and RSVP for the lino cut demonstrations on the Print Month calendar at ifpda.org, which is also where you'll find the video recordings of earlier programs. I should also point out that this year, in addition to Print Month, we continue to offer Print Week with in-person events around New York, culminating with the on-site programming at the IFPDA Print Fair, March 27th to the 30th at the Park Avenue Armory. If you'd like to receive updates for the upcoming March 2025 Print Week events, please be sure to subscribe to the IFPDA newsletter on ifpda.org. Today, we have the first of two programs presented this month by the Association of Print Scholars, longstanding partners of IFPDA Print Month. The program today is a conversation about artists' residencies and printmaking with a focus on the West Coast, moderated by Rachel Skokowski, who will be introduced by our friend at the APS, Kibel An. Kibel An is the vice president of APS and is a writer and art historian with a PhD from Harvard University. She specializes in connecting historical art and its markets to their contemporary counterparts. And with that, I'm very happy to turn this over to Kibel.
Thank you, Jenny. It's always a highlight of our year to partner with IFPDA to spotlight exciting voices in the print world. I'm here representing APS, founded 10 years ago. APS is a nonprofit organization committed to supporting the print community through awards, grants, workshops, and public programs, such as the one you're about to hear today. I'm happy to introduce our moderator today. Rachel Skokowski is the curator of the Janet Turner Print Museum at California State University, Chico. Originally from the Bay Area, she received her PhD from the University of Oxford, where she studied as a Rhodes Scholar. Rachel has worked with museum print collections in the US and abroad, including at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, the University of Sydney, the Ashmolean Museum. She has been an officer in the Association of Print Scholars since 2023. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Jenny and Kibel. I'm thrilled to be here today to celebrate the vibrant community of printmaking residencies on the West Coast. So today's panel will take the format of brief presentations by each of our panelists, a guided conversation for about 30 minutes, and then plenty of time for audience questions at the end. So please use the Q&A to type in your questions throughout the talk. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our three speakers today. So first up is Macy Chadwick. Macy received an MFA in Book Arts and Printmaking from the University of the Arts in Philadelphia and assisted book artist Julie Chen at Flying Fish Press in Berkeley for 3 years. After 15 years of teaching at the Academy of Art University, San Francisco Art Institute, and San Francisco Center for the Book, Macy moved to Petaluma, California, where she is the founder and director of In Cahoots Residency. In addition to her work at the residency, she continues to create books and limited edition prints, and her work is in prominent collections in the US and abroad, including the Victoria and Albert Museum, Yale University Special Collections, and the Jack Ginsberg Collection in South Africa. Our second panelist is Leyla Jamil Rzayeva, who is the Artist Residency Manager at Kala Art Institute, where she's responsible for Kala's artist residency and fellowship programs and works with 170 artists annually through the process of application, acceptance, arrival, evaluation. Leyla brings a depth of diverse administrative knowledge and creativity through work at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, the Walters Art Museum, and Clubhouse Lithography Workshop. Her artwork has been exhibited at the Berkeley Art Center and the 2023 DeYoung Open exhibition at the DeYoung Museum, among other locations. And finally, our third panelist is Julia DeMario. Julia began her career as an etching printer in 1983 at Robert Blackburn's printmaking workshop in New York City. She joined the print staff at Pace Editions in 1989, where she assisted master printer Aldo Kromelink on projects with Red Grooms, Ed Ruchet, Jennifer Bartlett, and Klaus Oldenburg, and collaborated with numerous artists, including Jim Dine, Chuck Close, and Mary Heilman. In the 1980s to 90s, Julia attended painting residencies at the McDowell Colony, the Blue Mountain Center, the Dorland Mountain Arts Colony, and the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology. And it was during her own residency at Sitka that she developed a lasting connection to the Oregon coast. In 2002, the founder, Frank Boyden, and then executive director, Randall Koch, approached her with the idea of developing a dedicated yearly print residency, and Jordan Schnitzer generously agreed to fund the program, which is now in its 22nd year. And Julia lives in the high desert of northeastern California, where she maintains a studio for both printmaking and painting. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming our panelists, and they're each going to share a brief presentation about their residencies, beginning with Macy Chadwick.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. Just going to share my screen. I direct In Cahoots Residency. We were founded in 2019, so we're pretty new compared to the other residencies presented here today. We host artists working in printmaking, letterpress, book art, and writing. We're in a pastoral location 1 hour north of San Francisco in Sonoma County, California, in a town called Petaluma. Our property is almost 4 acres. This is a view of the back of the barn, studio, and our fields. Here is the front of the studio building. This renovated barn studio houses our 1,700 square feet of studio space. Our printmaking studios include 3 large-scale etching presses that you can see here. Well, you can see 2 of them here. Our letterpress studios are in a converted horse stall. Our equipment includes 2 letterpresses and a collection of wood type. Another wing of the barn houses our bindery with a large work table and paper cutters, nipping presses, and other equipment for book artists. And we also have a separate writing studio. We invite writers to work alongside our visual artists. As our name In Cahoots suggests, we encourage collaboration. Artists can apply as a team and work together in the studios. We host residencies year-round with 24 sessions per year, 5 artists per session in the summer and 3 artists in the winter months. Our sessions range from 1 to 3 weeks in length. Cohorts arrive and depart at the same time, which creates a good sense of community. All sessions end with a casual work share to view works in progress and celebrate discoveries and successes. Artists stay in individual cottages. These cozy spaces have their own kitchens and bathrooms, and residents do their own cooking. Resident artists are expected to work independently, though we do offer mentorship and instruction for an additional charge. Applications are accepted twice a year, June 1st and October 1st, and there is a residency fee to attend. Grants are available for those with financial need. Grants are funded by our annual auction fundraiser. Please save the date for our next fundraiser, which is March 15th, 2025. You can bid on artworks both online and in person to support our grant program. More information can be found on our website or on Instagram. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Macy. And next we're going to have Leyla Rzayeva from Kala sharing a bit more about their program.
Thank you. I'm grateful for this opportunity and a beautiful panel. Kala Art Institute has been a vital art-making hub since mid-1970s. The residency program serves from 150 to 170 artists annually. Kala is located in West Berkeley, in Huichin, the home territory of Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people on Lishan Ohlone land. Kala offers multimedia residencies with support and facilities needed to create and feel welcome. The residency participants are international, local, national, and regional artists producing innovative work in printmaking, photography, new media, animation, film and video, sound, installation, and book art. Artists in residence are a vital part of a much larger CALA community, which includes youth and adult education, exhibitions, art sales, and a community and family programs. Artists receive 24/7 access to all facilities, which include 8,000 square foot shared print studio, black and white darkroom, digital lab, 3 individual artist project spaces, and highly specialized printmaking and digital media equipment. This program has subsidized residency rates, and they're meant for different working needs and artist experiences. Now, as we look at the CALA's Fellowship and Media Arts Fellowship Parent and Veterans Residency programs, something to note is they provide additional support and funding opportunities for 10 to 20 artists annually. For example, to list a few benefits for fellows, it is 1 to 9 months of studio residency, a $3,000 unrestricted stipend, a month of free housing for visiting artists, 1 free CALA class or workshop, fellowship group exhibition in the CALA Gallery as the culmination of the program. Another example is the Veterans Residency Program, which is 1 to 4 months of studio access, $1,000 stipend, CALA class, and access to a community and network of approximately 75 artists working monthly at CALA across all programs. And it includes participation in events and, of course, support of CALA staff throughout the program. Thank you again to IFPDA, Jenny, Cabell, Michelle, and thank you, Rachel, at the Association of Print Scholars for including me and CALA in the conversation. And I will also share the last slide of the artists featured, and I believe we're going to drop that in the chat.
Thank you, Leyla. And last but certainly not least, we have Julia DeMario from Sitka, who'll be sharing a little bit more about her program.
Hello, my name is Julia DeMario, and I have been the resident etching printer at the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology on the Oregon coast since 2002. As Rachel mentioned, I first became aware of the Sitka Center in 1996 when I met Frank Boyden, the founder of the Sitka Center. And at that time, Sitka was a very small residency with room for 2 or 3 artists in all media. And Sitka also welcomes writers and musicians and visual artists as well as printmakers. The printmaking program is a 6-week session in the fall where I am present to work with 3 artists who are chosen every year based on their interest in learning a new medium. The mission of the program when it was started was to afford this opportunity to painters, sculptors, ceramic artists who haven't had the opportunity to work one-on-one with a printer. My experience up until that point had been one-on-one collaboration or collaboration within a professional print studio where artists who do not see printmaking as their primary medium, but want to be able to make prints come and work with professional printer in order to achieve those goals. And so the mission of this program from its inception was to offer that opportunity to people who have had no experience or very little. Maybe they've taken a class or 2 in college or in their graduate programs. So it started out just by invitation. We wanted to start slowly so that I could figure out a rhythm to the program. So we invited people we knew might really appreciate the opportunity. And this first slide shows a little bit of the campus as it is now. It has expanded to now offer residencies for 5 to 6, sometimes 7 people. They've also purchased an offsite property where ecologists and scientists can go to do research and writing and projects other than art-related projects. And the photograph shown in the studio. The studio is a very large studio with a Ray Trail press. Ray Trail was a Portland-based press maker, and he's made presses for individual printmakers all over the state and I think the region. And Sitka has had this press for many years and had it before this program was set up, and it was underutilized. So the idea was to make a dedicated program for this press to be in full use. And I am working there with the artist Roy DeForest, who is a Bay Area artist who I knew personally, and I invited him. He'd never made etchings. He'd made a lot of lithos and screen prints. And that gives you a little idea of the studio. It is not always dedicated to printmaking. The press is on wheels, so it can be pushed into the corner, and that studio is used for all different purposes during the rest of the year. Sitka offers these long-term residencies for painters, as I said, musicians and writers, as well as they have a very vibrant workshop season in the summer where instructors come and give workshops in many subjects and media. The photograph on the bottom shows the Nature Conservancy headland that Sitka abuts, this protected headland owned by the Nature Conservancy, and it's on the mouth of the Salmon River, which leads out to the ocean. So that is the setting for Sitka. And if you want to change to the next slide, please. Thank you. And here are 3 past residents working in the studio. So the way the residency works, the rhythm of the residency is for the first few days, artists experiment on small plates and get a feel for the medium, the materials, the tools they'll be using. And then when they feel comfortable, we start working on plates with the idea that they will eventually be editioned by me in small editions of 10. So we have Heather Watkins, who's a Portland-based artist, working on a plate. And I am exclusively an etching printer. I do not offer woodcut or any kind of relief printing, although the press is capable of doing type high printmaking, and many artists, printers who come in, experienced printmakers can also apply for residencies where they have the studio all to themselves. So the press is available throughout the winter and spring sessions for that kind of printmaking use. And the center photograph is of Patty Warshina, who's a very well-known ceramic artist from Seattle, working on her print. And then the last slide is of Avantika Bawa, also a Portland-based sculptor and 2D artist and also sculpture, working on her plate at the acid sink, doing some spit bite. And I did not put a slide of the Sitka information, but anybody interested, there is a website, it's Sitka Center for Art and Ecology. It has all the residency application information on it, as well as websites for all the artists I've worked with through the Jordan Schnitzer Printmaking Residency. So thank you. And thank you to everyone as well for having me on this panel.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julia. I'll now invite all the panelists to turn their cameras back on so we can feel like we're all in the same room together chatting about prints. So thank you so much for sharing a bit more about your programs. I think it's really exciting to see the sort of range of possibilities for printmakers in these residencies. So I wanted to start with a question really about timing. CALA is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Julia, you've now been leading your residency for 22 years, and Macy, you founded In Cahoots, I think 5 years ago. So I'm curious if you could each share a bit more about some of the different challenges or opportunities that come with starting your own residency or sustaining a residency program over time. Macy, do you want to maybe start as the newest member on the block?
Yeah, I think the most challenging thing for me, this was kind of a passion project. I'm on my own as director, janitor, assistant, everything. I do have a part-time helper 2.5 days a week, but otherwise it's all me. But starting a program and setting up the property and maintaining a country property has been one of the biggest challenges. And then in terms of sort of sustaining the program, sustaining outreach through social media, word of mouth, and getting applicants to apply twice a year. And then, of course, fundraising has been a challenge to see what kind of fundraising I can do to help offer grants to artists.
Amazing. Julia, do you feel like you're a long way from that point, or does it still feel like you're constantly evolving and changing the program?
I would say my biggest challenge is expanding the application pool. As I mentioned, it began as an invitation only, and then we expanded that to include recommendations from past artists. The biggest challenge with this program is artists who've never collaborated with somebody and are used to working alone in their studio and not having to verbalize their ideas or their visions for their work, to be thrown into a studio with somebody they don't know and have to communicate those things. So it's been a big challenge choosing people that I think will be well suited to this and also thrive within that environment. And after a while of just having artists recommend artists, we decided to put it on the application form on the website. And I have expanded the reach of the program that way and had artists come from different parts of the country, which has been wonderful, but that still seems like a challenge. I want it to reach the opportunity to reach more people, and hopefully through this panel that will be achieved to some extent. Yeah, it's an intense program, and it isn't for everyone. It is only 2 weeks, but 2 weeks can feel like 2 months if you've never had the experience.
Yeah, fantastic. Leyla, I know you've come in, and I was amazed to see that, you're working with 170 artists. I mean, Kala has this huge reach. How has that been, working with such a large organization at this point?
Yeah, it's a very fun and fulfilling challenge of our programs. And it's really about finding out how best to support artists, their extended community, which includes beyond their families, like audiences and collectors. But the broad community also allows us to sustain a feeling of, not a feeling, but a real sense of reciprocity. It gives rise to many artist-led experiences, such as Skillshare between the residents when they're in cohorts, but also volunteering. We have an annual auction fundraising coming up, and there's a committee already in place, and artists are part of that. And then the size and multimedia approach of our residencies is really key for me personally to pushing innovation in printmaking and experimentation across media. I see it's very helpful for artists in their careers to have that outlet for multimedia that includes printmaking. And then all of that is kind of points to the flexible model, a blended model. And then that gives us an ability to change, adapt, and uplift the artists.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how you're all sort of operating on very different models. I mean, Julia, there's this opportunity for this very intensive one-on-one collaboration. Macy, I know you're bringing in artists and writers. Kala is working across media. What do you think makes it especially valuable for printmakers to, have the experiences that they do at your residencies? I guess I'm curious if there's something about the sort of printmaking process, which I know can be, very collaborative and generative. And then I guess the other question here is thinking about location. This is all centered around the West Coast, but you're all situated in different environments. What factor does that play for artists and their experience at your residencies?
I think some artists come to In Cahoots to sort of escape their urban lifestyle. Some come to make art really based on the nature around them and take walks and kind of make imagery based on that. But I think the majority come just to kind of escape the hustle bustle of their regular life, whether it's an urban life or rural life, but just to kind of come as a place to retreat and really concentrate on their artwork. So
I think that's true for the artists who come to Sitka in general. They're escaping city life and they take advantage of the beautiful natural surroundings. The artists who come for the Jordan Schnitzer program tend to feel, in a way, self-chained to the studio because they're learning so much and they want to just be in there all day. We're there from 9 to 5, that they are often there throughout the night, working out ideas and practicing what they've learned. And I actually have to encourage them to go out and take a walk or go down to the river and take a kayak out because it is part of the experience, but it's not the location for my artists is not the primary reason they're coming, but it is for the people who are here for longer residencies for sure. The location plays a big part.
What about in urban Berkeley?
Yeah, and I just always have to say that like every print shop is different. Even so when the residents come, I think one of the biggest benefits is like the support and a quick run through the presses that they receive if they're printers. But also, you know, like there's always community building events. And in my view, the success is often visible not only in their experience while in residency, but what happens after. So the experiences of artists do not end after they leave Kala and after the residency is completed. And speaking to like the synergy of the location, I would say, as an example, we had hosted 2 musicians this past year, and their practice was research, video, performance art. And we do see as a jury in our selection panels that artists are often interested and apply with proposals that focus on archival research, historical research, specific to the SF Bay area. So that is really exciting to see because they're coming in from many parts of region, North America, international, South America, and they're just Kala is one key in the multi-pronged practice that they're doing.
I love this idea that the residency experience doesn't end when you leave. I'm sure Macy and Julia, you have examples of how that relationship continues with the artists who do come to the residency afterwards.
Yeah, some of it's really exciting. Like a visual artist just published a book, and he invited the writer that he had been at In Cahoots with 2 years ago to write his introduction. And he handed me the book, and I said, "No way! You know, this is so great that they kept in touch and then worked on this project together." So the collaboration continues on after the experience.
And I'm always so gratified when artists who've come through the JSPR program find other ways to make prints. They find other print shops where they can take classes and expand their knowledge, or they work with other printers. Often artists who've come through Sitka go to Crow Shadow, another print residency located in southeastern Washington. Or, you know, there's if I can see that they've been bitten by the printmaking bug and they want to continue on, that always makes me very happy.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. The printmaking bug, definitely. Okay, that'll catch you. Well, I was curious I know there are probably a lot of artists on this webinar, but there are also people like me, curators, collectors, others who might never participate in a residency. What creative opportunities do you think there might be for partnerships between museums, other institutions, and residencies? I don't think I actually mentioned it in your bio, Julia, but I know there's a collaboration between the Portland Art Museum and the work you're doing at Sitka. But I think it's a really exciting area to think about.
Right from the beginning, the Gilkey Center at the print center at the Portland Art Museum, the center has been offered one of everything that has been produced in the program. They usually choose one or two. If an artist does 6 editions, they'll choose 2. So over the course of the 22 years, the Gilkey Center has quite a large collection of the prints produced in this program. And Jordan Schnitzer also gets one of every edition for his vast collection of prints, and Sitka retains one for their permanent collection. And there are always a few for sale through Sitka, and also the artist retains 5. We do editions of 10. The artist retains 5 plus an artist proof to sell or do as they please with.
That's great. For me, I think the biggest way that curators, collectors, institutions can interact with us is support. So coming to events, sending artists our way, helping us spread the word. Second is, of course, fundraising, participating in the auction, also spreading the word on that. But the most exciting thing for me is sort of named scholarships for artists. We do have 2 institutions that have scholarships that they award in their name to the artists coming to In Cahoots. And I'm looking to expand that. We also have 3 individuals and actually a real estate agency that offer named scholarships. So that's an exciting way to support In Cahoots.
And then I agree with everything everyone's saying. It's the resources in the arts and sciences too are like super slim. And the more like direct cross interaction between curators, gallerists, residencies, the better I think the chances to improving situations for everyone, artists, art workers, making safer spaces for artists, supporting their voice. So I would say the time to collect the artist's work is now. And because we do see artists continue to shape their careers after the residencies,
absolutely.
and they really blow up in a good way. So to get in there and support them now is so vital. And I want to advocate a little bit for art workers as well. Wouldn't it be exciting to have, everyone who supports the residencies also continue on to do some sort of special fellowship at museums or special curatorial projects, so that it really is a kind of like a self healing system that keeps everyone, in the same, I would say not in the same, but expanding views and points of view.
Yeah, cool.
I love that idea. I can see we're getting some questions in the Q&A, so I'll transition to that in a minute. But I just wanted to ask my last question of all of you, which is, what is your #1 top tip for printmakers on applying to or making the most of a residency?
I'll go apply with a cohesive body of work and a good proposal of what you might do at least at In Cahoots. And then once you arrive, try to really unplug from the real world. So once you arrive, just really be here. I think some people tend to be torn and they still have meetings with their job back home, but if at all possible, just completely unplug and be in the space and doing your work.
My top tip is exchange phone numbers with other residents you're in the program with, emails, really network. And then don't be shy to ask staff for recommendations after this opportunity when you're applying to other opportunities. Keep going.
Yes, I find my experience shows that the letter of intent is really important. Good quality slide or images are very important as well, as Macy said, a cohesive body of work. But I really read the letters and see the motivation for coming and doing this, and the openness to experimentation and mistake making, and not being wedded to a final outcome in any way, and also unplugging for sure, like leaving the computer if at all possible, unless needed for reference materials in their living quarters. And I also just want to say, I forgot to mention that Sitka is participating in the Portland Art Museum Print Fair as well. We've done this once before in the past, in this January. That's another way, print fairs is another way to engage with collectors and curators. And so this year in January, Sitka will be represented at the Portland Art Museum Print Fair.
Wonderful. That's really exciting. Okay, I'm gonna start opening up the chat here. I know Cabell is gonna help me as well. I'll try and go in order. So the first one is a question from Fatima Kaleem. Is the $3,000 stipend mentioned for Kala Art a monthly stipend? Would also like to know about the stipend or fees for Sitka. Thank you.
To answer that really quick, that is a one-time stipend, and often artists who are not local, they only have to participate for at least 4 weeks at Kala. They don't have to do the whole 9 months. And they receive the stipend no matter what. So we love to support artists that way.
The JSPR artists receive an honorarium, and I have to say I'm not sure exactly how much it is, but they receive an honorarium and a travel stipend and a living quarters, an individual where they cook as with In Cahoots. Everybody cooks for themselves. They have a kitchen within their living quarters. So yeah, nobody has to pay to come and do this program.
Thank you.
We have a question concerning whether any or all of the residencies are available to international artists and applicants.
Absolutely. I have an artist from
Yes.
Latvia here right now.
Great. Yes,
Yeah.
we are open to international artists. We don't have a whole department to help people deal with visas and funding and that kind of thing. So international artists are more than welcome, but they do need to be able to handle all those things on their own. Whereas I don't know, does Kala help people with visas and things?
No, but we do suggest that it's a tourist visa model to the US. And they artists often, because of the shorter duration of that visa, it's usually very doable.
Great. Okay, our next question is, oh, this is a good one. It seems that new equipment is always popping up. Do printmaking residencies that focus on teaching more traditional practices feel inspired to adopt new techniques, or is the basis to master core approaches to printmaking?
We don't in Cahoots, we don't focus on teaching. We just have mentorship and instruction. Sometimes we'll have guest instructors come in if it's a technique that I'm not familiar with. But we do the tried and true traditional methods here. Although we do offer airbrush aqua tint and some newer non-toxic methods, but for the most part, it's traditional.
It's very traditional at Sitka. I do copper plate etching with all the traditional soft ground, hard ground, aqua tint, you know, the same things that were being used in the 18th century, basically. It's a very rudimentary studio. And as I said, it's used for many, many different purposes. The room changes constantly. So there's no room for permanent not materials, but more a permanent setup for technological improvement, I suppose. It's just the press and the basic materials at Sitka.
I would say for Kala also does not Kala supports education, but through our classes and adult classes and youth arts programs. That $3,000 stipend can often be used for the funded residencies to take a class. It could be a class in your locale, and then you come to Kala. But it is a blended model. We offer a lot of new media equipment. Kala is also opening up an annex that will have 3 sewing machines, a kiln. So we are constantly adding what's safe. I remember someone on the board really wanted a 3D printer, but it does require a ton of ventilation need. So it's often you have to think when you're adding new equipment about how to make it safe for artists who are coming in and using it. But like I said, we host musicians, we host digital artists. Sometimes fellows are completely working in digital media, but they're really curious about screen printing on t-shirts for their performance. So it can be a complete blend of their practices.
On that note, I think there's a similar question as to whether a resident artist has introduced something that each of your residencies might have adopted as a practice since.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
can
if
you
the answer is no.
And I think I mean, this is an interesting question. Yeah, has anyone really come to the residency, done something, it maybe introduced you to a new technique or an approach that you've since adopted?
For sure. What comes to mind is one of my artists came and did something called a shellac plate, which is basically putting shellac on cardboard and scraping through it while it's drying to make a sort of calligraph type plate. And I've continued to tell future artists about this technique. And so it's sort of like her legacy continues here, the first artist who did that at In Cahoots. So things like that are always happening here.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
have a question just to add to that, because I know Rachel already asked about whether landscape and the setting plays in the artist's work. And this may be just because I live in a city. Like, do artists actually have there been instances of artists getting into nature printing, like printing directly from nature?
Mhm. How about you, Julia?
Yes, definitely. I never say no to any idea an artist comes to me with, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I've had to try printing moss on a soft ground plate, bark, every kind of mushrooms, even some work, some don't. But what I found that whatever we etch on the plate is an opportunity to change, improve, and go forward with it. So even if it isn't a success in the first state, an artist usually finds a way to make it work in the end, through state 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. But yes, nature has definitely come into the studio in the form of soft ground. And also just drawing from nature. People have brought in snails and slugs and shells from down at the river and drawn from those objects.
Yeah, I think the most common thing to happen at In Cahoots is it's so sunny here in California. So people come and they just quick order cyanotype chemicals and start, printing from directly from the grasses and everything that they're collecting. And then one resident did propose to do a collaboration with the horses that are in my field. She really wanted the horses to interact with her copper plates, but horses don't step on foreign objects. She wanted them to sort of trample on her plates and swish their tails across the soft ground. And eventually she ended up drawing the horses because the horses were like, no way, that thing smells weird. What are you doing with that plate near me?
That reminds me of one artist, Sandy Gellis, who came, an artist I knew in New York. She came early on in the residency, and she wanted the animals to interact with her plates. And so she put a hard grounded plate on her balcony with bird seed all over it. And in the course of a week, birds came and they pecked all the seed off the plate. And it was actually a beautiful plate that we used in multiple editions. And she also put a white grounded plate down by the riverbank, so that the tide coming in would do something to the white ground, and the tide going out, we'd presumably be able to find the plate again. But of course, we couldn't find it. I found it the next year. I was walking down on the beach and I thought, oh my gosh, what is that odd thing? I picked it up and it still had some white ground on it and lots of corrosion. So I etched it, and she ended up making a really beautiful image with that plate a year later.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's amazing. I love the serendipity of that.
Yeah.
In urban spaces, it's very similar experience. I'll drop this artist's website in the chat. Tingying Han came and did a lot of rubbings at the Chinese Culture Center in San Francisco of the pavement, and also used a lot of like screen printed a lot of street signs. And he's an amazing contemporary conceptual artist. So it's like inspiration really comes from so many places.
It's true.
Thank you all. Okay, we've got a few more questions coming in. And yes, please, everyone, write in your questions. We have about 10 more minutes for questions. I think some of you have already answered this, but maybe a little more detail. For artists participating in a printmaking residency, what do you think is the best way to prepare?
I have an artist here right now who brought some partially finished prints with her so that, and I was talking to her yesterday and she said she really wanted to have these projects started so that she could jump right in with something and not be in that place of I've got blank plates and blank paper, where do I begin? And I think that that's when I've seen artists do that, just bring something that they just need to sign or finish the last color on. It's a great way to sort of jumpstart your practice, especially if you're here for a couple weeks.
I would say same as Macy. It's absolutely key to have something going, whether it's journal or visual starts. But also really order your paper ahead of time. Even though we're in Berkeley, it's 30 minutes walking distance to an art store. And unless someone in the residency staff gives you a ride to get the paper, I think it's best to just ship it to the residency and have it ready, even if you have a little extra left over, including ink. I'll pass it on.
I find that coming with an open mind and no plans really works well, because so much will happen in the first few days of the test plates that artists who have come a little too prepared and are too wedded to a specific idea tend to drop it in a couple of days anyway. So I think coming with lots of ideas in their heads and an open mind to what will happen in those first few days is the key. And also coming with your favorite sketchbook and some drawing tools, but I have all the etching tools, all the papers provided, all the inks are provided. So artists don't have to worry about those materials, just their comfort tools, their pens and pencils and paintbrushes and ideas.
Great.
Yeah, these are all just amazing tips. I actually, here's an interesting question. Do you think there is a way for print residencies to collaborate amongst themselves? I know you're all sort of far away, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, Kala and In Cahoots are about an hour apart or less.
Yeah.
I've definitely wanted this, especially when artists are coming from far away. We did have an artist here this summer who went straight from In Cahoots to Kala, or was it the other way around? Anyway, spent a couple weeks at each, and that is ideal for me to sort of have an artist that can go to both places or a few places and kind of line them up. But I haven't figured out a sort of way to do that. How about you, Leyla?
Yeah, I agree that I think there was even two artists that did that combo, like Kala, then In Cahoots, then Kala. If someone has that much time, that's awesome. Often artists will maybe try Kala one year, then try In Cahoots the next year. So I would say like networks that connect residency hosts together are really helpful, such as Artist Communities Alliance. And like I said, I'd love to see like if residencies could host other residency staff, that would be amazing, because we are, I feel like, missing a lot of on the ground info sometimes, unless someone reaches out directly and asks questions like, hey, do you have something new you're implementing? And we love to share and love when other residencies share info with Kala.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going forward, I think, I know Sitka would like to expand the program to possibly include a segment that has a cohort, perhaps somebody running it and choosing 3 or 4 artists who would all be here at the same time, perhaps working in a larger collaborative setting, not just the one-on-one. I don't know how soon that can happen, but that's definitely something we would be open to. And the same goes for Sitka, often artists come here and then go to Crow Shadow, or go to Crow Shadow and come here. We don't have anything sort of set for that, but it just seems to happen naturally that artists do both opportunities. Yeah.
I love this idea of exchange, not only between the artists who are, maybe visiting multiple residencies, but between the staff who are running the residencies to really learn about
Right.
these different approaches. And this is why I'm so excited that you're all here, because yeah, it's wonderful to think about that side of it, what goes into running a program. Well, we have one more question in the Q&A. Sarah Amy Verity says, thank you so much for this always phenomenal program. I'm a printmaker of 20 years in Johannesburg, South Africa, and I've had resident artists live and work with me. I'm interested to know how a smaller studio without larger funding bodies maintains non-resident work. For example, do you think it's sustainable to host only residencies, or do you focus a portion of time on editioning or publishing? Hope this makes sense.
So really what I'm hearing from this question is, are there creative ways to fund a residency beyond just hosting residents? I think that might be what she's asked. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense depending on the time of the host, I think that someone with editioning skills who's also running a residency could split their time between those two in order to help with the funding. What do you guys think?
The editions definitely help with the funding. I edition the week after the artist leaves. So an artist is there for 2 weeks. I edition for a week. The next artist comes, and those editions, as I said, are split between the artist and Sitka. So there are always a number of prints for sale from every edition. And I think maybe Sitka is very unique in that way, that I have the time to do both while I'm here. And that is a challenge. And as far as publishing, Sitka has dedicated people here focusing on the print collection and getting it out in the world. And that was a challenge for a long time, because the publishing part of it, you don't want to end up with flat files full of prints. You want them to get out there in the world and also benefit the program going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Model to look at might be Small Craft Advisory Press in Tallahassee, Florida. And they have 1 or 2 visiting artists a year, and they create limited edition artist books, and then they sell those books to fund the following artist coming in the next year. So it's through Florida State, University of Florida, I can't remember, in Tallahassee. So it has institutional sort of overhead, but it funds itself. So how well the book the year before did is how far afield they can get someone to fly in for the next, which is a really great model. I did look at that and then decided I didn't have time, but it's a really great model.
And I know we're almost at time here. So Leyla, if you want to jump in with anything else, and then we'll hand it over to Jenny.
Oh, sure. I just want to say, like, when I ran my own press in Baltimore, I did a bunch of art fairs. And so publishing is that, like, just making sure the time in the year is open in your schedule for that, where you can sell a little bit of the prints that you created with a collaborator.
And I was going to suggest another model we had 2 years ago as an invitational exhibitor at the IFPDA Print Fair, Anderson Ranch, which offers residencies and also has a publishing program to diversify their revenue stream. So Anderson Ranch in Colorado would be a good one to look at. I think that we will wrap up here. We're almost at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us today. Thank you for all those excellent questions. Thank you, Julia, Leyla, Macy, Rachel, and Cabell for this excellent program. I hope that you can all join us next week. We'll have on Tuesday the second program from the Association of Print Scholars with a panel discussing the magical collaborations that happen between artists and printmakers, and we'll have master printers Felix Harlan, Maria Ancona, and Andrew Mockler for that. And then on Thursday, we have one of the highlights of Print Month, which is Print Study Day hosted by the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Which will be focused this year on graphic cultures of Latin America. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week.